Okay, good evening everyone. Happy New Year. Let's start off with this third session of Android Study Jams. All right, what are we going to cover today? Today we will be doing a small recap of what we learned in session 2, and then we'll discuss certain concepts in Unit 3, and then finally we will do the review of the two or three apps that were done in Unit 3, which is Words app and Unscramble app. And then after that, we will have a Q&A session. All right. Okay. So, one sec. Yeah. So in session 2, first we discussed a bit about the layouts, how they were built using views and view groups. And then after that, we moved on to the XML part of it. And we discussed what are the different XML types, how they are used, about your Android manifest. And then we even saw how it was used to build your layout and such. And finally, we even talked about Gradle and how it's very useful for building and compiling your app. After that, we did a code review of the tip time and affirmations app, in which just went through the flow and saw how all this was implemented. All right, now moving on, we'll start with the topic for today's session. So if let's start off with unit 3, intents. Okay, so intent, what is an intent? Okay, it's most commonly used to launch an activity, but that's not the only use. And it's an object that refers to some action that has to be performed, right? So, and there are basically two types of intents. First is your implicit and then your explicit intent. So let's start with explicit because you'll be using it much more. In explicit intent is usually highly specific and it's used to launch an activity in your app. So for example, you have a few screens in your app and you want to navigate. Then you launch an intent saying that I want to navigate to the screen, and then give it some arguments, whatever you're supposed to do. And then you start the intent. All right. Then after that is your implicit intent. Now implicit intent is has a wide range of uses. Mainly it tells the Android system what to do. All right, so let's say you want to open a link or Google or URL, or you want to send a mail to somebody. There are, like, you would have encountered this while using your phones or different apps, that the pop-up comes out. Right now how that happens is the app first tells Android that this is the intent that I have, like this has to be handled, but it doesn't tell how exactly to handle it. Android is responsible for figuring out how to handle it. So it checks what all apps are there, how it can be opened, and then when you select an app, it's opened using that app and passing the arguments. All those things happen with your implicit intents. Now, if you look at the piece of code afterwards, you see that first you declare the context, because that is what is required to, like, start an intent. You need to have a bit of information about the current app context in which it's running, and some more information about that. And then after that, you declare your intent saying that this is the context, and we want to launch this detail activity. So this is basically an explicit intent. So you're saying that inside our app we have this app called activity called detail activity, and I want to launch that using this intent. Finally, you say that before that you say intent.put extra, and you give two arguments. So what put extra is basically you're giving some more, like, you're giving data, or you're passing data to the next activity. So that's what put extra does. When you say detail activity dot letter, so you're saying that for when you're passing the data, you need to call it, refer it to it by some name, right? So that is what refers to detail activity dot letter. And and then you have holder dot button dot text dot to string. So what this does, it gets the value of the text in that button. So, and then after that we call context dot start activity and this intent. All right, so what these four piece of lines does is it basically starts another activity, and it passes the arguments using put extra. Okay, so this is an example of explicit intents. I mean, if you don't want to use your Jetpack navigation, you can use these, but we will get to Jetpack navigation later, which is much more convenient than what explicit intent does. Okay. Moving on, we have the activity lifecycle. Now, this is a very important concept when you are developing apps. It basically refers to what and all stages an activity goes through um, when the user is interacting with the app. All right. So first we have all the code and how it's supposed to be constructed and all in the class, which is basically our initialized state. After that, when the activity started, or the first time when the activity is needed to be used, that time it has to come to the created state where there is memory allocated for that activity in the system, and certain background tasks are already started running. And then after that, when the user is finally able to see the activity, it comes to the started state. Okay. In the started state, the user is able to see the activity. He isn't exactly interacting with it yet, but once the user starts interacting with it, then it comes into the resume state. Okay. And again, when the app closes or something happens, so when you finally loses focus, when the user starts interacting with something else, the activity loses focus and it comes back to the started state. And then after that, when the activity isn't visible anymore, it comes to your created state. And then finally, when the app is closed or the memory is deallocated, then it comes into your destroyed state. Now this is very important because when the activity passes through these states, certain methods are called, and like on create, on start, on resume, on pause, on destroy. And what happens is you can use these methods to your advantage and like execute certain tasks when the activity is about to be closed or something happens to the activity, then you can execute these tasks using these methods. Okay, and it's very important to understand and properly use this activity lifecycle within your app. Okay, next we have Jetpack navigation, and which is another important part of Android development in Kotlin. Okay, so what Jetpack is basically it's a set of libraries that simplifies and reduces a lot of boilerplate code when developing apps. And Jetpack navigation in particular has a lot of features related to navigation that makes things very easy to use and handle. So let's say that we want to make an activity which has 3 fragments and we want to swap out the fragments. Now, what is a fragment? Activity we learned about in the last session. It's basically a screen in your UI with data and all those things. And a fragment is basically a mini activity. All right. It only occupies a part of the screen and it has its own life cycle and UI and such. So we want to, like, you'd have seen fragments being used in many places before, like if you have a small menu or something like that, then the UI changes in that part, meaning they could have easily used fragments for that. Okay. So when you want to use Jetpack navigation for that, uh, then you would need 3 main things. So the first thing would be your nav host fragment. So it's basically stands for navigation host fragment. It's what displays the fragment that has to be like shown to the user. And then after that you have the navigation controller or nav controller, which is used to perform all the actions. And action, okay, let's just talk about action a bit. Action is basically when you're it's a I mean, if you want to change the fragments or move between one activity to another, that's basically what is an action. Okay, so Jetpack uses actions and passes arguments along with that to make it uh, better than explicit intents. And then after that, we have yeah. After that, we have your nav graph, which is another very important part because it's a new XML file type which is used to visualize the navigation. Okay, so you will be coding a bit in the XML part also, but there is a layout editor where you can like drag and drop and then see how it actually looks, like all your screens, the actions that connect to your screen, and then afterwards even the arguments and certain other properties that are there. And also, one other core component is your safe arguments. Okay, so safe arguments, what it does is it generates classes for your navigation to access for destinations and actions. So instead of like randomly calling them, you access the class or class and its methods for navigating between these classes. All right. And that is very useful because you know what is there and what you have defined, and you can exactly call that. And some, because if you don't have, it's not defined and you just refer to it, sometimes it can generate errors. And it's also very useful for passing arguments. So that's why it's called safe args, right? It's very useful for passing your arguments, and it like lists what and all arguments are there. And it like mainly it reduces a lot of errors. Okay, and that's why it's used quite widely. Okay, so we'll just take a look at the Words app. And see how these concepts are implemented. All right. Okay. Before that, do you guys have any questions? In the chat box or okay, this unit, will be the third unit. You can even unmute yourself if you have any questions. Okay, I don't think there are any questions. Okay, let's just take a look at the code for the Words app, and then we'll see how it works out. All right, just give me a moment. So let me just close this and so let's talk about the nav graph first. It should be the easiest part of your app to make. So we'll have this XML here that says there's a navigation type XML. We have defined what and all fragments we want to use. And then inside those fragments, what and all actions are there, what arguments are there. So like everything is available in one place. That's the best part about your nav graph right here. If you check in the design page, then you can even look at how it will actually look. You can select it and see all the arguments, actions. When you select the actions, you can even set the animations, behaviors. A lot of options are there, and then you can even see like if your app gets more bigger, you will have this nav graph will be bigger, and many times it's harder to visualize without such a pictorial representation, right? So that's where this comes in very handy. After that, we will be having our let's just check the main activity. So in your main activity, we have declared a nav controller, and before that we get the nav host fragment. All right, so what this line does is that it get r.id.nav host fragment. So this fragment we have declared in our XML file layout file for main activity, saying that it's the id is nav host fragment, and the width and height is so and so, and the nav graph is also specified. So here we say that get the nav host fragment using this ID. And then afterwards, from the nav host fragment, we get the nav controller. All right. Why we need the nav controller is because it helps in like basically specifying and controlling all the actions. And suppose we call this setup action bar with nav controller, right? What this does is it also sets up the action bar with your nav controller. Wait, let's if you take a look here, the Words app that's there here, right? This top part will be your action bar. You'd have seen this in many apps. So if you're just swapping out the fragments or changing screens, the nav controller can automatically take care of your action bar, so you don't have to manually code it every time. So that's why we use nav controller like so, and we even have a support navigate app. This what it does is it handles the back button, saying that if nav controller has another action for back button, then do that, or just do the default action. All right. So coming to the fragments, we have two fragments. First is the letter list fragment that, okay, I think the screen wasn't visible. One sec. Yeah. Huh. So if you come to your letter list fragment, basically we declare a few variables like your recycler view and your bindings, I guess which we discussed in the last session. A binding is basically a reference to the like UI that you have instantiated using your XML. So I mean, the methods here for your fragment will be slightly different. Like I said, it has its own life cycle, right? So there are a few methods like on create view, on view created. You don't have to worry much about it. You can do most of your things in your on view created, and then so coming to that, we basically assign our recycler view and we call choose layout. So inside your choose layout, we say that we set a layout manager. Okay, as we would have seen in the app here, we can have two layouts, mainly the linear layout and the grid layout. So we choose the layout and we can change the layouts as well. And the animation, not the animation, all this is handled by your nav controller. Like when you select this, it goes here. When you press back, it comes back here. It's all handled by the nav controller. All right. So one sec. Let's just see letter adapter. Okay, yeah. So in your letter list fragment, there is this letter adapter, and this is what handles all the recycler view and stuff. So when you click a button, for example, like this, then it's handled by this method here in your letter adapter, this one. All right. So last session itself, we saw that how your recycler view works, the view holder, how it just gives you a reference for the views inside your holder, and then after that how we assign it using the on create view holder, and then in your on bind view holder we perform all the actions that needs to be done. So if you see here, we assign the button the text that's there in that current position of the button, and then after that we say that when the button is clicked we need you to perform these actions. All right. So basically we saw that in explicit intents you'll have to declare your intent and then set the arguments and such, right? So here it's like simplified a lot. You just have to declare an action, say that in your letter list fragment direction. So if you see here, letter list fragment directions and your action letter list fragment to word list fragment, these both are classes generated by the directions class was generated by your safe args, so that you actually know what you're doing and it's not going to generate any errors. All right. So you say that the directions that are there for this class, I want to perform this action, and this here, the letter that we currently selected, that is the argument that we are passing. All right. And then we find the nav controller and we tell that perform this action for me, change the fragment, and we will move to that. All right, so when that happens, we will come to our word list fragment, where again we just set up our recycler view a bit or here, and then in the word list fragment we again have our recycler view with all the specified methods, view holder, and all those things. I mean, this we can like check about it in the course itself. There is, we just have to get into the code. Let's talk more about the overall flow, right? So here if you see, the on click listener for our word is actually calling implicit intent. Okay, so we're saying that we have this URL that we want to use, and then using that URL I want you to launch something, and we tell that to the Android system when we say start activity. So here if we go to this and say education, it will launch the activity in Google Chrome. Okay, that's how Android decides to handle when we say that we need you to handle action that launches a URL. Okay, so that was a bit about the Words app. Let's move on and discuss about the further topics. All right. Okay. Yeah. One sec. So after the Words app, basically we learn a bit about view model and live data. So why we want to use view model is because we need to separate the concerns, right? We want to have a bit like, we want to let the activity handle the UI part of it, and we want to let the a different class handle the different data part of it. So why this has to be done is because you saw the life cycle that we discussed about before, right? In the life cycle, the activity can get created, destroyed, it goes out of focus, a lot of things can happen. And sometimes if the Android system runs low on memory, it can even choose to destroy the activity, in which case we lose our data that's there in the activity. So if you're doing things like that, obviously it isn't optimal to store your data in your activity, right? That's why we move it out, and view model helps us with doing this. So a view model is basically all the data in your app, and like for that activity, whatever data is there, it creates a class of that and it holds it. And main feature of this obviously is that even when your activity is destroyed, the view model will not be destroyed. So even when your activity gets created, recreated, all those things happen, it can go through its life cycle, but your data will be safe with your view model. Okay, and live data is basically another class that is very helpful in like streamlining your UI. So what that does is that it's an observable data holder class. What that means is we have our data, right? We, for a specific data, we can just wrap it in something and say that I want to observe this. So whenever that data changes, we want the observers to be notified that the data changes, so the observers can do or call their methods or do whatever they have to. And live data helps with this. Okay, and the thing is that it's life cycle aware. What that means is that when your observer is there in an activity and uh, the value changes. Okay, suppose your activity is then destroyed, the observer won't be called because there is no point, right? The activity doesn't even exist. So there's no need to call the observer. It just calls the required observers and notifies them that there has been a change in data, so that it can directly update the UI without like handling other stuff. Okay, we will just see a bit about this in the next thing that we have, that is the Unscramble app. Okay. Okay, let me just, in your Unscramble app. Okay, so basically what happens in your Unscramble app is that, let's just take our game fragment. Okay. Um, in your game fragment, we first declare our view model, saying that this is a game view model type. And what this by view models does is that first it says that whatever properties are there in view model, I'm also going to use it. And second thing is that it delegates the responsibility to view model, saying that you will be handling the instantiation and whatever happens along with this variable or data, all those things will be handled by view models class. Okay, so that if it's handled by the activity, then it's going to get destroyed again when the activity is destroyed. So there's no point to that. So we have to delegate it to some other class that is separate from the activity. Okay. So when you see in your on view created, first we say that the lifecycle owner is this. Basically what we do is that this is for, okay, sorry, this is for the live data. Let me just move to the other one. Yeah. Okay, we have our new model here. Okay, then we say that there are a few methods here. We set this text on the screen, and then we call this method, to which invokes certain things in our view model. Okay, let's check the view model first. Okay, in your view model, you can see these 3 lines of code, right? What this does is that it declares a variable called underscore score, and we have made this private because we don't want it to be accessed by other apps. Okay, you know what private is that it's a scope, and a scope is very widely used in programming. It basically means that the portion of the or your project to which this particular variable or function is visible to. So if we say private, it's only visible in this class. If you say public, then it's visible everywhere. So to maintain a certain sense of what do you say, separation, then for that we use this. Okay, we need to keep stuff private, right? So why we have made it private here is because we don't want anybody changing the score. Okay, when you say that some event has happened, we will handle the changing of the score, but it has to be readable to you. That's why we use the second part, which is basically val score is int. So here we're saying that this score, we haven't specified a scope here, if you can notice. That's because this is public. We want everybody to see this, and it's declared as a val or value. So in Kotlin, that means that it cannot be changed. Okay. So what this does is that it says get is equal to underscore score. So this says that mirror the value of score, and it's visible to everybody, but it can't be changed because it's a value. All right. So we have basically achieved something in these 3 lines. We have said that we just declared a score. You can't change it, but I'll handle all the things, and you can access it and use it if you want. And we have done the same thing for the current word count, the scrambled words list, and a lot of other things. So what happens here is that there are certain methods to handle the next word. Like if you check the app, let me just move to that. If you check the app, all right, when you press the button for submit or submit word or skip word, then all these functions will be handled. All right, and what they do is that they don't do anything on their own. They don't handle the data. They just say that view model, this event has occurred, I need you to handle it and update the data according to whatever is happening. So here we say that view model, we check the word if it's correct, and if it's correct, we get the next word. If it's not, we get we show the final score dialog. All those are the how it flows, the logic. And I mean, it's all pretty self-explanatory. If you go through the course, we just want to see how the whole thing works, right? So that's how we separate it. We say we just delegate everything to view model. All these functions are there saying that get text word, reinitialize data, increase score, is the word correct, get the next word, all those things. And in game fragment, all we do is that we just intimate view model saying that all this has happened with all these functions. All right. So that's how it goes about working. So if you say something and submit it, it says it's not the correct word, and then you can skip it, and view model handles everything in the background as separately from the UI. Okay, that's how effectively we have separated the UI and your data. Okay, now coming to how live data is used, I mean, there isn't much to know about this. All you do is that there's a small change in your initialization. Instead of saying that it's an int, you'll say it's a mutable live data, and here you'll say that score is a live data. Okay, now if you see where score is used, you can say that you can see that here in your game fragment, when you call a dialog or when you use the score, we say score dot value. Okay, that's how like it's called, and the values immediately got. And if you check in your layout, all right, we would have passed the binding to your layout saying that game fragment. Okay, so here, before we come to how it's used, we'll just see that with data binding, we have passed the game view model as a variable, and the max number of words, we would have passed it over here in our game fragment. All right, we just assign it to the binding. So that's how binding also comes in. You can pass data to the XML and use it interchangeably. So here we say that this text right here, we say from the word count string that's there, the word count string that's there. Okay, from that we want to put the values of the view model's current word and the max number of words. So the current word count is, this is your live data. If you check this, if you go to this reference, we see that this is a live data that mirrors the value of your mutable live data, that is current word count. So what this single line of code does is that when current word count changes, it automatically updates the value in your UI. Okay, that's the benefit of your view model. Sorry, live data. If you check in your previous app, then in that, you every time if something happens, you would have had to like set the value here like this. Here you'll have to set the get string every time, updated manually, but here it does all that for you, and it even checks for lifecycle changes. All right, so that's how everything happens in all of these things. And I think I think we have covered everything. uh, let's just see if there's something else. Yep, that's about it. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself or talk about it in the chat. Okay, I will see the recording later. Just can we get it? Is it the deadline? Okay. Okay, I'll just address these questions as they come, and thank you everyone for attending this session. Wishing you a happy new year again.